Okay, Ambassador Bolton, I'm so sorry. We have to break in there just because the suit, I guess it's the president-elect motorcade is arriving at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, where President-elect Biden, incoming First Lady Jill Biden, and a bipartisan delegation, leaders of Congress, including the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, although those roles are about to change, where Schumer will become the Majority Leader and McConnell the Minority Leader, as well as Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and their spouses will attend Mass with President-elect Biden and Jill Biden at Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle in downtown Washington, D.C.
And we're used to seeing presidents go right next to the Blair House, maybe even walk over to St. John's, sometimes ride to St. John's Episcopal Church, which has historically been the church for modern presidents. Franklin Roosevelt, Truman, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Obama, and even President Trump went there. But as we were talking about last night, Joe Biden is only the second Catholic, will be the second Catholic president in American history. Here you see members of his family going up into the cathedral, and St. Matthew's Cathedral is one of the most remarkable buildings if you've ever been inside. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous cathedral, and it is the home of so many historical moments in presidential history, in American history, not the least of which the funeral mass for President John F. Kennedy was there on November 25th, 1963.
It's not surprising, watching Joe Biden in the public eye this past year, you see him attending church at major moments of inflection for him, going to Mass very frequently during the campaign on big days. And so this is no different from that, but it is, as you noted, Dana, part of a long tradition of presidents attending church services on the morning of their inauguration. And again, this morning, who he is attending with is particularly important for this country, for Washington, D.C., just 2 weeks to the day after Capitol Hill was attacked. And those same members of Congress that we'll see today were inside that building that was under siege. Jake was speaking just this morning to a Biden aide about Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader who will be there today, who was one of the people who spoke about election fraud and peddled these lies, but still deciding to show up here this morning. I think the Biden team is making a clear statement that this is not about forgiving and forgetting necessarily, but about showing a path forward for governance and what that can look like in this new era.
Yeah, and McCarthy himself is trying to rewrite history by pretending he wasn't part of it. In his remarks the other day, he said it's not the American way to pretend that Biden isn't legitimate, even though he had been among the leaders of those pretending that Biden was not legitimate. Anderson?
Jake, as we watch Joe Biden and the future First Lady in this church, Evan Osnos, for this president, faith is something which is very real, a very real part of his life. This is not a photo op for the cameras.
No, this is at the core of who he is. You know, he has often said if he didn't go into politics, he would have been a priest. And, you know, that church is a landmark in political history. It is, of course, the place where John F. Kennedy was memorialized. We all remember that image of his son, JFK Jr., just 3 years old. It was his 3rd birthday, waving on the steps of that church. And it was John F. Kennedy, in fact, the first Roman Catholic president who inspired Joe Biden to go into politics at all. He was a senior in high school when Kennedy was inaugurated, and you follow that forward to today. And I think there is a power in the ritual. You know, Joe Biden is a big believer in ritual. It's part of his faith. It's part of his family life. You know, every year they go to the same places for Thanksgiving. They make sandwiches and eat them in the car. I mean, it is a big part of how he imagines that you heal. You know, it's when his family was torn apart at multiple times, the way they got through it, as he will tell you, was ritual. And what we're seeing today is, despite the attempt by an outgoing president to dispense with the rituals, to toss them out, to say, I'm going to create an alternative reality, essentially, Joe Biden is saying, no, the ritual prevails. And the ritual today is the handoff, the peaceful transfer of power.
Biden about this. And even after the death of his wife and his young child, and then of course Beau, I asked him, did you lose your faith? And he said, no, it was my rock. His wife did. She lost her faith for a while, but he continued. And what he is saying with, this is a staffer of his told me a story that when they're traveling, when he was vice president, they would always, she put it, had to find a priest so he could have a service, a private service, no matter where they were. Because it is so, so important to him. It is the ritual. It's kind of a refreshing of your mind in many ways, taking you out of your job that you have to do, and it is so important to him, and it is so not something he is doing as a performance art. It is something he really believes in.